guys, what's up? I'm Mary Richardson. I help professionals and entrepreneurs to overcome the things that are keeping them stuck. In this video, I want to cover why you may have DPDR, otherwise known as depersonalization, derealization. If you are experiencing DPDR, you already know what it is, but for those of you who maybe are just hearing this, or maybe you've read about this, but you're not quite sure what it is, that's what this video is going to talk about. What it is and why you may be experiencing these weird symptoms. All right, let's jump in. By the way, I help people overcome the things that keep them stuck, whether that's anxiety, self-doubt, procrastination, that keep you stuck in a loop, self-sabotaging, even unwanted habits like smoking and things that just keep you stuck and where you don't want to be. Let's jump into this video why you have DPDR, or why you may have it. Of course, I'm not a medical doctor, and this doesn't replace seeing a medical doctor. This is for general knowledge and to give you some things, some ideas of why you might have this disorder. It's estimated, first of all, in my research, I've discovered that it's estimated about half of the population experiences dissociation. What does that mean? It means you almost experience a sort of fragmented reality, or it feels like you're out of your body, almost like an out-of-body experience. DP is depersonalization, DR is derealization. So depersonalization is something that you might experience similar to an out-of-body experience where you don't feel like you're in your body. And there's no other way to say it. It's different for everyone, though, as to what it feels like for them. Why you might be experiencing some of the depersonalization, derealization, is because of strong anxiety, strong stress, triggers. That can be a trigger as well. Also, if you have had or insomnia or gone a long time without sleep, a complete lack of sleep even, can be a trigger for DPDR. Also, if your environment around you is too overwhelming for you or overstimulating, that can be a trigger. And they can also make symptoms worse. Of course, a history of abuse or neglect as a child, or even if you experience trauma, either as an adult or as a child, with that history, it can really set you up to experience depersonalization or derealization. Derealization is where you feel disconnected from the world. The best way I've studied or researched it to feel like is where the world is sort of outside of yourself. In other words, almost like you have a glass or something, almost like you're in this bowl or a fish bowl where there's a wall between you and the rest of the world, where you don't really feel connected to the world outside of you. Depersonalization, I think, is far more common, in my opinion. The good news for these symptoms is they're very different. Most people that experience these symptoms at some point might think that they are going crazy. For the most part, most people are not going crazy. Again, almost half of the population experiences dissociation. So you might think, well, isn't that what a schizophrenic experiences? Yes. However, and again, it's not a replacement for seeing a doctor. If you think you have these things, go see a doctor. A schizophrenic can't determine reality from what they're experiencing. A person with depersonalization, derealization often knows what is real and what is not real. So you still, even if you have an experience of depersonalization, you can experience not being in your body, but you still are able to move your arms and legs. You're still aware of your own thoughts, and you're still aware of what is real and what is not real. So let's dive back into the triggers or stressors that cause or may cause depersonalization, derealization. When you have experienced ongoing or prolonged trauma, that can really set you up to experience depersonalization, derealization, because it's too overwhelming for the brain, and the brain's response is to keep you alive on the planet. So it takes you away from like experiencing your emotions. When your emotions are too overwhelming, it can pull you out of that, almost like out of your body is what it feels like. So you're not having to experience the in the moment trauma. If you've ever been in a car accident, or I hope you haven't, but something along that line is a good example, because it's very traumatic. You didn't expect it to happen. You didn't want it to happen. You probably were going somewhere you needed to be, and this is the last thing you wanted to have to deal with. And it can be really overwhelming about what do I do now? Who do I call? How's my vehicle? How's my car? How am I? Am I all right? And it can be so overwhelming, all of this stress, where you might all of a sudden feel like you're a robot and you are able to function and you're able to go through it, but you don't really feel grounded in your body. You don't feel in your body. So a severe, an ongoing anxiety, etc. Also, if you witness domestic violence, that can be a trigger for depersonalization, derealization as well, because it's so horrific, so traumatic, very much like PTSD, where you just want to, well, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, where it's so traumatizing that your mind is just trying to get you buffered from what was so traumatic. So that the fragmented sense of consciousness, over time, it can be a response to anything. So I guess the downside to depersonalization is that it might have been a coping mechanism at one time, but now you're using it because it's become a habit. You're using it even when the stress is just minor, or even if you can't even pinpoint a trigger, a stress trigger. You might find that you are just experiencing these things, unable to connect it to any major event. So that's what happens. It kind of becomes a habit, where you're really, also the downside, in my opinion, is that you're not really staying grounded and dealing with your feelings. You're sort of buffering yourself from them, which is useful if it's a horrific trauma in the moment. But if you're using it ongoing to deal with everything in your life, then you can see where it could keep happening, because you're really not strengthening your emotional coping muscles, your coping skills. You're not making them better. You're just almost running from them, avoiding them, pulling back, pulling out of your body. So you can imagine that anything that happens to you that is the slightest bit disturbing or anxiety producing, slightest bit stressful, you just depersonalize and become that robot. And of course, it could be a pattern that just keeps going on and on and on, because you're not learning how to cope with difficult situations effectively for you. And that's really the biggest thing, is you need to be able to cope with life as it comes up. And one of the best ways is to stay grounded. And I cover that in another video. So be sure and look at that, DPDR, and how to stay grounded and in the moment, so that you can start overcoming it. But like most things, at some point you started doing this because of some traumatic event, something that was too overwhelming for you to deal with. So what's overwhelming for one person may not be overwhelming for another. So you can't compare yourself to, well, this person experienced the same thing and they don't do this. Well, that's great for them, but what was not overwhelming for them is definitely troubling and disturbing to you. You know, it's almost like watching so many violent movies that at some point it seems like normal, but a person who's never done that watching it could be greatly disturbed by seeing violence like that. So what is stressful for one person is not stressful for another. And also, when you watch that kind of disturbing things over and over, when you witness domestic violence over and over, it's always disturbing on some level, but you're not processing that in a healthy way. You're almost avoiding being in touch with reality at that point. Well, you're in touch with reality, but you're avoiding your own emotions. So instead of saying, you know, this as an adult, this relationship is not healthy because I'm one of my coping skills, you might say to yourself, one of your coping skills is to just depersonalize and sort of pull back out of your body, but you're not really dealing with the relationship. So of course it's going to keep happening because you're not taking steps to move away from the toxic relationship or out of the toxic relationship or to get help through that. So just pulling yourself out of emotionally can help in the moment, but not in the long term. Anyway, I hope this video helps you. I'm Mary Kay Richardson. So just to recap, understanding why you have depersonalization, derealization disorder, if that's what you're experiencing or think you might be experiencing. Definitely a lack of sleep can be a trigger. An overstimulated environment can trigger it. I would say even if you have, I'm not a medical doctor, of course, but if you have attention deficit disorder, you're used to being overstimulated by just being in a room. So you can imagine being out in a mall or in, you know, an audience or somewhere where there's a ton of people, that could be a really big trigger for being way overstimulated. And the only way to cope, it seems in the moment, is to depersonalize. So that overstimulating environment will be different for each person. It can make the symptoms worse. And if you've experienced trauma in your past, witnessed domestic violence, a toxic relationship, a narcissistic relationship, surely can set you up for DPDR because it's so horrific. You start questioning your own sanity, really, because the narcissist keeps telling you what you saw you didn't see, what you heard you didn't hear. And so they're trying to convince you that what you know to be true isn't true. So certainly that can set you up for DPDR as a coping mechanism too. So I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you on the next video. I'm Mary Kay Richardson. I help people just like you move past the things that are keeping them stuck, and so that move you forward so that you can be the very best version of yourself. Bye for right now.